Hey guys, I know it's been a minute around here, but I'm back now. Live adulting happened. I know most of you can relate, but we're back now and I'm excited to be back here with you all. I miss you guys, by the way. But yeah, let's get right into today's video. Today we'll be talking about something that I think is very important, something that I think will level up your UX research game, especially as a beginner. Today we'll be talking about the top 5 UX research methods that I think every beginner should know. So whether you are new to UX research or you're transitioning into UX research or you just want to know when to use what method, then this one is for you. And before we get right into it, if you're seeing my face for the first time, my name is Toby Lasisi and I'm a full-time user experience researcher. I currently work in Quantum, and on this channel I talk everything user experience research, from starting out to career advancements and everything in between. So if that's something that you might be interested in, please do well to check out other contents on my channel and please subscribe. That will be a huge support to my channel. I look forward to having you join this little community. So let's get straight into today's video. Like I said, today we'll be talking about the top 5 UX research methods that I think every beginner should know. So rather than us just listing out the methods like we were reading the textbook, let's try to tell a story around them. So picture this. Let's say you just landed your first UX research project, you're all excited, you're pumped up, and then your lead designer comes to you and say, oh yeah, for this project we're working on, what method are you using? And then in your brain you are like, all of them? None of them? I'm not sure. So if that sounds like a familiar scenario, or if that sounds like a possible scenario in your head, stick around, don't worry. We'll fix that in a minute. So on this channel, we've determined that UX research is all about understanding people, understanding real people, how they think, what they need, and how they experience your product. And to understand these real people, to get these answers from these people, you need the right tools. You need the right UX research methods. And when I say UX research methods are like tools in a toolbox. Each one of them helps you to understand something different, helps you to learn something different about your user. So sticking to the tool in a toolbox analogy, just like you wouldn't use a hammer to screw in a bolt, you wouldn't want to use the wrong research method to answer your research question. So see each method as a lens that helps you to focus on different aspects of the user experience. So as we talk through each of these 5 methods that I say we'll talk about today, I'll tell you when to use each of them, where they shine best, when to skip them, and when not to use them, and also try to give some practical examples. So let's start with method 1, one of my favorites, user interviews. In very simple terms, user interviews are one-on-one conversations that you have with your users to learn how they think, what they feel, and how they behave. So let's imagine this scenario. Your team is designing a learning app to help users learn about quantum computing. But on your end, you don't know what users are struggling with. Should you add more videos? Do they need videos? Should you add more explanations? Do they need courses or tutorials? These kind of things are things that you don't know yet. So you don't have answers to this question yet. Here's where user interviews shine. Here's where they come in. And so you go ahead and draft your research questions, your discussion questions, and then you schedule interviews with 5, 6, 7, 8 people that you think might be worth talking to, and you jump on this Teams WebEx call to carry out some user interview sessions with them. And then you start asking them questions like, tell me about the last time you tried to learn anything at all. And then you also ask questions like, okay, tell me about the last time you tried to learn anything about quantum computing. How was your experience like? And they start to open up to you as you ask these questions and tell you about their experience, about how they learn, about what they feel when they're learning, about what they're thinking, and all sorts. And they tell you things like, oh, when I started, I didn't even know where to start from. I had no idea what to click. Oh, when I was trying to read it up, I didn't understand the math. Oh, I found that part of the study quite confusing. I really enjoyed this part where they broke things down into these bits. And so yes, you start gathering all of this user insight from these conversations, from these one-on-one conversations that you're having with the users. And so for this first method, we talked about the user interview. The best time to use that is very early in the project, at the beginning of a project. When you're trying to explore the user's world, you want to understand the user's goals, you want to understand the user's needs, you want to understand their frustrations, that is the best time to use user interviews. Also, if you need to validate an idea, let's say you have an idea and you want to validate it, that's a good time to use user interviews. My pro tip for this method is ask a lot of why question. Why do you do that? So when you ask a question and the user tells you about the experience, tells you about how they feel, make sure to ask the why question. Why did you feel that way? Why were you frustrated? Why did you like it? Those kind of questions will help you probe more into understanding the user's experience. Also, make sure you listen more than you talk. Allow your users talk. Make sure you're listening. Make sure you do not interrupt them. Make sure you give them space. It's okay to have those silent moments. Don't find them awkward. So make sure you're listening more than you're talking. And do not interrupt your users. Or try not to interrupt. And another pro tip for user interviews is before you go into your interview, try to have a list of questions, which we call the discussion questions, that you want to ask your users. But be flexible. Be open to adapting your questions as you move along with your one-on-one conversations. Moving on to our second research method, that would be usability testing. This one is where you allow users to use the product or the prototype and you watch them as they complete real tasks using the product or a prototype. So going back to our scenario of trying to design a learning app for your users. After everything that you learned from the user interviews, you've gone back to the team with your findings and your insights, and your team has developed this very lovely learning app. It looks really sleek to you. Everything looks beautiful. You think it's working well. Everything looks fine to you. But the big question is, can users use it? And so to help us answer this question, here comes usability testing. And so you invite some users to test what you have developed. And to test this, you have these users carry out actual tasks on your product. You ask them to start a lesson, you ask them to read through a lesson, for example, you ask them to bookmark a lesson or bookmark an article, you ask them to save their progress, those kind of things that are possible on your app. And then you're there watching them doing all of this, basically observing them. And so let's say, for example, a user clicks, and then goes on and says, oh wait, how do I even start a lesson, by the way? At this point, we can tell that we have most likely found a friction. We have most likely found a usability problem. When do we use usability testing? When you have a live product, when you have a prototype, a wireframe that you would like to test with users. Mostly before you ship the final product or even during design iterations. Overall, usability testing will be used to uncover and fix any confusion, frictions, or usability issues in the design. Pro tip, when carrying out usability testing, ask users to think aloud. Tell them to talk out anything that they're thinking in their mind. Again here, let the awkward moments happen. Don't jump in to feeling the silent, awkward moment. Let them happen. These are where the real insights are. When they struggle, Watch them. Make sure you're observing and understanding why they are struggling. Don't just jump in to help immediately. That's where the real insight is. Don't just jump in to save the moment and avoid those awkwardness. It's very okay to have those moments. You will learn a lot from those awkward moments. Moving to our third method, that's a very common one. That's surveys. So that's where you collect structured feedback from a large group of people. So let's say after you carry out your user interviews, you've also carried out some usability testing, some patterns are beginning to emerge. And so let's say as you're sharing the insights and findings with your team, you all see this peculiar insights and you're wondering, oh, how common is this insight? Does this affect a small group of people or does this affect many users? This is where surveys come in. Surveys can help you scale up insights. For example, you send your survey to 150 users and ask them on the scale of 1 to 5, how confident do you feel using this app? So let's say, for example, for this question, let's say 80% of people that responded to the survey rated it 1 or 2. That is a signal that there's a problem to fix somewhere. And so the best time to use surveys will be when you need to validate insights from user interviews, when you have identified some needs and you need to prioritize them, or when you need to quantify some sentiment. Pro tip for surveys: mix closed-ended questions, total questions with those multiple choices, with a very few open-ended questions. Try to minimize the amount of open-ended questions that you'll be adding to your surveys. So mix closed-ended questions with 1, 2, or 3 open-ended questions. Also, as much as you can, try to keep your surveys under 5 minutes. And that takes us to our method number 4, card sorting. So card sorting is a method that helps us understand how users naturally group information. So going back to our learning app example, let's say you got all these insights from carrying out the user interviews, from doing usability testing, from carrying out some surveys, and then you have designed this app with loads of content. And so in your learning app, you have tutorials, you have courses, you have additional resources, you have toolkits, all this kind of content. And then your team asks the question of how do we organize this in such a way that users can easily find what they need. So this is where card sorting helps. So let's say you have like 40 tutorials. Do they go under topics like beginner or advanced? Or do they go on that topic like cascades, noise models, error mitigation? How do we organize these tutorials? And so in this kind of scenario, what you do is you create cards with the topics on each of them, and you give these cards to the users and ask them to organize these cards in such a way that it makes sense to them. And then you begin to see that maybe beginners and the advanced users, they organize these cards in different ways. Or maybe the educators and the researchers are organizing these cards in totally different ways. Or maybe even the way that a developer or the developers and the researchers are organizing the cards are different. And so what this begins to reveal to you is the different organization structure or the different navigation system that works for these different groups of people. And so, like I said, it helps you understand how these groups of people naturally organize information. So when to use card sorting: when structuring or restructuring content, or when designing menus, navigation, or the information architecture of your app or your site. And so that takes us to the 5th method, that one which we don't hear so often. That is what we call the contextual inquiry. And this is the one where you observe users in their actual real environment in order to uncover some hidden behaviors. Sometimes the biggest insights do not come from what users say, but comes from what they actually do in their real environment. So let's say, for example, you shadow a quantum developer in their lab. So you watch them use their tools, but you also see that on the side, they are scribbling down some notes in some physical notebook. And then you go ahead to ask, why are you doing that? And then it turns out that the tool that they are using doesn't support note-taking, or it doesn't support session logging. And just like that, you just uncover the gap in the features. That's an opportunity to improve the user experience of the tool. And so you can recommend to the team to include a feature called login notes, log note, experiment notes, some kind of feature that allows them to take notes while using the tool. And that's something that you might not have uncovered when you talk to them or when you watch them doing usability study in your own environment. You might never uncover that unless you actually observe them in the natural environment. And so when to use contextual inquiry when researching complex workflows, when you know that the environment affects behaviors, when you're working with technical or enterprise tools, you want to observe users in their natural environment using those tools. My pro tip for that would be watch first, observe first before asking questions. So take your time to observe the user or the users before going in with your question. Very often, users would not even mention this behavior because it's just second nature to them. They wouldn't mention it unless you observe them yourself. So don't interrupt, observe first, ask questions later or debrief later. So let's recap. Our first method was user interviews. When do we use that? Very early in the project, at the beginning of the project, mostly to understand users' needs, their goals, their frustrations, or even motivations. And then our second method was usability testing, where we uncover confusions, frictions, and usability issues. Then we also talked about the third one, which was surveys, which helps us to scale and validate insights. And our fourth method was card sorting, which helps us to organize content in such a way that users would naturally understand. And lastly, we talked about the contextual inquiry, which helps us to observe users in their real environment. And of course, observe real-world behaviors that we might not get by talking to the users unless we observe them in their natural habitat. My bonus pro tip would be that when you're starting out, you do not need to master all of these methods at once. Just choose a method that suits or fits your research question and then build your skill gradually. And of course, this is not an exhaustive list. There are more methods, more research methods that we use in user experience. We'll talk about some of them in other videos, but these are very good methods to start with. So tell me, which of these methods are you excited to try out next? Or is there any one of them that you'd like me to talk about more in the next video? Just let me know. And if you found any of these helpful, please do well to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I would really love to have you stay around here. And thank you for sticking around. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
You and I, we never show emotions, we just